Hey, how's it going? Welcome back. I'm going to do a contest entry today for Ground Zero Salem's Evolving Opinions contest. Now, back when I first started watching VC videos, I would see channels that were created largely by people whose musical tastes do not mirror mine in any way, shape, or form. So you can imagine my relief when I discovered there was a VC metal community. So I watched a bunch of those videos, and eventually I stumbled upon Pat's channel, Ground Zero Salem. Now, here was a guy whose musical tastes ran right along the same line as mine. Really, really enjoyed metal, but he was also hugely into punk, hardcore, and stuff like that, which I can respect, obviously. Um, I got to know Pat a bit. Super cool guy, super welcoming. Um, but then, even aside from that, you just look at his channel. The dude knows his shit. It's almost limitless. Um, and the way he puts across his descriptions and his opinions of the records he's showing, it's top notch. Like if anybody watching this is considering starting a YouTube channel of this sort, anyways, uh, that's the guy to watch because he does it right. So I can confidently say I wouldn't be doing this channel if it wasn't for Pat in some capacity, because I just watched what he did and thought, meh, I can do that, and I can, but not quite as well. So, anyways, Pat rules. I think we all know that. So he's doing a contest, Evolving Opinions. Wants you to show records or bands or whatever that you started out liking and no longer care for, or you started out hating and grew to like them. Pretty easy. Not really. I had to sit down and think about it for a while. There are some glaring, obvious choices, but I kind of wanted to avoid them. There are still some in the stack that I have, but I wanted to throw a few different ones out there. And the first one I think is one of those. I'll preface it by saying that when I was getting into punk and hardcore, we're talking like mid '80s, like late '84, early '85. I lived in a small town in Ontario. So for you to look punk at that time in a small town in Ontario, it just opened up a bunch of shit. Like, people would make fun of you because the only reference point they had for punks really was what you'd see on sitcoms, like a cartoony version of it. There was no major label, punk bands, that people were aware of really, aside from maybe the Ramones or something. But yeah, so people just thought you were instantly a fucking cartoon character, or they'd want to fight you, or both. So I I wasn't really into being made fun of about it too much because what I was doing to me was serious as it gets. Um, but there was one band that kind of had, well, they definitely had the cartoony image going on, but they kind of had the attention of the mainstream, so you would see them on variety shows now and again, or whatever. Um, and they just kind of seemed to take that stereotype, that cartoon stereotype of punk, and run with it. And at the time, this guy wasn't having it. The band I'm talking about is the Plasmatics. Um, New Hope for the Wretched would have been a better choice for this because it shows them at their cartoony best, but that has fallen victim to misfiling because I couldn't find it. So, anyways, this is Coup d'etat. This is kind of where they took a metal turn, really. But earlier stuff in this, super cartoony, can't be denied. um, Richie Stotts in a Dayglow tutu and shit like that. And, everything's just super colorful and just not what the real representation of punk was as far as I knew. And you had Wendy O. Williams, running around in her underwear with, electrical tape on her nipples. And she had a voice that sounded like Bullwinkle mixed with a Cowardly Lion. I just wasn't having it. But, in later years, I grew to appreciate it. And now I'm totally on board with it because I see, I have a sense of humor about it. But at the time when I was getting beat up for, kind of looking like that, uh, yeah, it wasn't quite so fun. All right, next up, we'll go with Blondie. Now, when I was a kid, the only exposure to Blondie that I had were their radio hits, which to me was just like shitty disco, and they played it nonstop. It was all over the radio, like they were huge hit makers. Um, but then I would hear people, talking about Blondie being punk, and again, this guy said the fuck it is, and it really wasn't. But then later, like much later, I started hearing this stuff, like 1979 Blondie, where yeah, it kind of made sense to me at that point. So, I mean, I had uh, I had kind of just put a blanketed opinion out over Blondie that all their stuff was shit, but in the end I was wrong. This is actually really good. So I half like Blondie after not liking them at all. So yeah. As a side note, this record is super hard to find. I've only ever seen one other copy. Most people I've shown it to have never even weren't even aware that this existed, but I want to find an upgrade copy and it's proving difficult. All right, now the last one for bands that I never used to like. This may elicit some gasps, maybe some chapped asses. So, grab yourself a box of tissues and some Tux medicated pads and let's do this. Venom. I was into metal when this came out, but the only Venom that I ever really had any experience with was like Much Music, like the Canadian version of MTV. They would show a few Venom videos, but they were all from like the same live show. And so that's all I had to form my opinion of Venom on. And to me, it just sounded like just kind of, amateurish, clunky metal played by, three guys that look like, my shitty, creepy uncles at a BDSM themed family reunion, which is popular here in Canada, by the way. So yeah, I just, it was like, yeah, there's so much better metal out there to listen to than Venom. So I'll stick with that stuff. And it wasn't until years later that I jumped on with them. Like, I mean, they're still not my favorite metal band, but I like them infinitely more now than I did back then. So yeah. Okay, bands that I liked at first. This one's probably going to get shown a lot, but Anthrax. Yeah, I can't deny it. I got this on cassette in like 1985. And I loved it as soon as it went into my Walkman. I was just like, oh yeah, this is good shit. And I played the hell out of it. I think I may have even like wore the tape out. And I loved it. It was, in fact, I still love it today. It's it's probably in my top 20 all-time metal records. But then they became this. This I'm not so fussy on. Just the whole goofy atmosphere of it, the sudden change in attire. I never really liked Joey Belladonna's voice, and the video, even though it's not on this record, but the video for Indians played on Much Music so much that I'll probably kill myself if I ever have to hear it again. So yeah, Anthrax, they just took a turn for the worse with me, and okay. Pat also did this band, but I'm doing it too. DRI. Now, first time I ever heard DRI was on the International Peace compilation. I believe they did the song Snap on there, which is the opening track off this record. And so I started exploring them. I found the Dirty Rotten EP and all that stuff. Super fast, super short songs, like almost auctioneer vocals. And then they came out with this one, and it was much different. The production wasn't quite as thin. They just kind of they were technically better. I love this record, love it, still love it to this day. The stuff before this is really really good, like it too, but this is the height of DRI for me. And then after this, everything just went downhill because they became metal. Their songs became long, and they just bored the shit out of me. A couple tracks here and there, but I don't own anything past dealing with it. I thought I might own Crossover. Turns out I don't. But yeah, after dealing with it, I got no use for them. Although they are supposed to play here this summer, and I probably will see them. So let the hypocrisy flow, but I won't like it. All right, corrosion of conformity. Now, you have to understand, animosity it's a top 10 hardcore record for me ever. Like, I listened to the shit out of that out of that record, and I still love that record to this day. um, I love the style of it. I love this. It's just gnarled and ugly, and it's all hissy, and there's Black Sabbath where there needs to be Black Sabbath, and it's just, yeah, it's just a vile, vulgar sounding record. um, so that's a pretty high bar to put in front of me for COC. Like, the earlier stuff I liked, but I didn't hear it until after I heard Animosity. Animosity was the first thing by them I ever heard, as far as I know. Maybe some comp tracks, yeah, probably on like Cleanse of Bacteria or something. But then they came out with this, and I was like, like, obviously different vocalist. Like, he got Simon Bob Sinister from the Ugly Americans. Loved what he did in the Ugly Americans. This was just such a kind of a production and style change, like a little too much for me to not be disappointed. I mean, this is still okay, but it's, for me, it's not even anything compared to Animosity. And there's another song I think with this same lineup, the song Bound, which is on the Rap Music for Rap People volume, I think maybe 3. That song's, I like it better than any of the ones on this, but it still just isn't COC to me. And then, they got into, that swamp rocky vote with a bullet bullshit, and it's like, no, I'm out. Okay, so I'll finish this off with a couple that were ruined for me by my friends. Just the stuff where they glom onto it and then they just play it to death, and the repercussions are felt with me. They're all grown up now, and they all have families, and they probably don't listen to music anymore aside from on the car radio and whatever. But for people like me who still listen to music, they've ruined these records for me. Number 1, Schmalika, Master of Puppets. I mean, great record. When it came out, we were all wowed, but some of my friends were wowed enough to put this in the tape deck of the car and just let it auto reverse for an entire night. I don't think, it'll be a long time before I can listen to this again. Still know all the words and all that shit, but yet I can throw on Kill 'Em All and dig it, but Master of Puppets is just not yet. Same goes for Megadeth. Peace sells, but who's buying? Heard it way too much. This was by a friend of mine who was learning the bass, and he learned how to play, the bass line in Peace sells, but who's buying? And as a result, we had to listen to this all the time. And Much Music's partly to blame because they played videos from this record, nonstop, and yeah, it just beat me down. And I didn't really like Megadeth that much to begin with. Like, I had The Killing Is My Business, on cassette pretty much when it came out, and I was like, it's all right. Just sounds like a Metallica knockoff. But that one, not for a while. And lastly, Pat mentioned this one. Masterpiece of a record. Can't listen to it anymore. Know all the words, It might be a treat when it comes on for about 20 seconds, and I'm like, no, I've heard it way too much in my lifetime. Everyone I knew, even people that weren't into like thrash and stuff, friends of mine that like classic rock and all that shit, they loved this when it came out. It's like, I can still hang with Show No Mercy and Hell Awaits, because they're just different. But this is, it's pretty much a perfect record. It's just a perfect record that I can't in good conscience listen to anymore because it has been beaten into my head repeatedly. So, yeah. So that's it. Thanks for doing the contest, Pat. No, if you're not subscribed to him, which would be ridiculous at this point, I'll put a link to his channel in the comment or in the description. So from me, present day, and from me, 1985-ish. See you later. That's it.